There were places, once, where all human knowledge gathered. Great halls filled with scrolls. Silent rooms where scholars bent over ancient texts. Libraries that held the accumulated wisdom of civilizations. Most of them are gone now. Destroyed by fire, by war, by time itself. But we can still walk through them in our minds. We can imagine the light filtering through high windows, the smell of papyrus and ink, the whisper of pages turning, the soft footsteps of scholars walking between shelves. We can picture the reading rooms. Quiet, peaceful, where the only sound was breathing and thinking, and the occasional scratch of a pen. Let us begin our journey. Let us visit these lost temples of knowledge. One by one, slowly, taking our time. In the quiet hours before sleep, the most famous of all lost libraries stood on the shores of the Mediterranean, in the city of Alexandria, in Egypt, where the desert met the sea, where Africa touched the ancient world. The city itself was new, founded by Alexander the Great in 331 BCE, named for himself, as conquerors do. He chose the location carefully. A strip of land between the Mediterranean and Lake Mareotis, with a natural harbor, protected from storms, perfect for trade. Perfect for a great city. Alexander died young, before his city was truly built. But his vision lived on. His empire was divided among his generals. Ptolemy took Egypt and made Alexandria his capital. Ptolemy the First. Ptolemy Soter. Ptolemy the Savior. He had ambitions. Not just for power, but for knowledge. The library was founded around 300 BCE. As part of a larger complex, the Mausaion, the Temple of the Muses, 9 sisters, goddesses of inspiration, Calliope for epic poetry, Clio for history, Euterpe for music, Orato for lyric poetry, Melpomene for tragedy, Polyhymnia for hymns, Terpsichore for dance, Thalia for comedy, Urania for astronomy, a temple to all knowledge, all arts, all sciences. That was the dream. Imagine approaching the library for the first time. You've traveled for weeks across the Mediterranean. Your ship finally entering Alexandria's harbor. The city sprawls before you. White buildings gleaming in the Egyptian sun. The famous lighthouse rising on the island of Pharos. One of the 7 wonders of the world. You make your way through the city streets. Past markets filled with goods from across the world. Spices from India. Silk from China. Grain from the Nile Delta. Wine from Greece, and everywhere people speaking a dozen different languages. Greeks and Egyptians. Jews and Phoenicians. Merchants and scholars. Priests and sailors. Alexandria is the crossroads of the world. And its library is the reason you've come. The library building stands near the royal quarter, part of the palace complex. Impressive. Imposing. Marble columns rise toward the sky. Tall. Fluted. Topped with ornate capitals. Carved with acanthus leaves, you climb the steps. Stone worn smooth by countless feet. Through the entrance. Into the cool interior. Your eyes adjust to the dimmer light. And you see them. The scrolls. The main hall stretches far into shadow. Shelves line every wall, rising from floor to ceiling, made of cedar wood, fragrant, long-lasting, resistant to insects. Each shelf is filled with scrolls, papyrus rolls, some short, some many feet long, each scroll carefully labeled. With a small tag attached, identifying the work, the author, the subject. Some scrolls are new, the papyrus still pale, the ink still dark. Others are old, yellowed, fragile. Handled with great care, the librarians move quietly through the space, wearing simple robes, barefoot, so as not to track dust. They know where everything is. What shelf? What section? They've memorized the catalogue. All of it. There are reading rooms off the main hall. Smaller spaces. Quieter still. Wooden tables. Benches. Simple but well made. Scholars sit reading, unrolling scrolls carefully. Left hand holding the already read portion. Right hand unrolling what comes next. The papyrus crackles softly. A familiar sound in this space. The sound of knowledge being accessed. Some scholars make notes on wax tablets or on scraps of papyrus. The scratch of stylus on wax. The whisper of reed pen on paper. Others simply read. And remember, training their minds to hold vast amounts of information. For there are no printing presses, no easy way to duplicate texts. Memory is crucial. The library holds, they say, hundreds of thousands of scrolls. The exact number varies depending on who you ask. Some say 400,000. Some say 700,000. Perhaps no one truly knows, but the number hardly matters. What matters is the scope. The ambition, the goal was to collect everything. Every text. Every scroll. From every civilization, Greek philosophy and drama, Egyptian wisdom texts, Babylonian astronomy, Persian history, Jewish sacred writings, Indian mathematics, all of human knowledge. In one place. That was the dream. The library had scholars from across the known world. Some lived there, in rooms provided by the Ptolemies, with stipends, so they could focus entirely on their work. No need to work for a living. No need to farm or trade. Just study. Just think. Just write. It was revolutionary. Never before had scholars been so supported, so honored. So free to pursue knowledge for its own sake. Euclid worked there around 300 BCE, teaching mathematics, writing his Elements, 13 books of geometry, of proofs and theorems, building from simple axioms to complex conclusions. He would sit in one of the reading rooms, drawing diagrams, circles and triangles, lines and angles, testing his proofs, making sure each step followed logically, making sure everything was rigorous, perfect. His work would become the foundation of geometry, studied by every mathematician for 2,000 years, still studied today, still relevant, still beautiful in its logic. Eratosthenes was another scholar there. He became head librarian. Around 240 BCE, he was interested in everything. Mathematics, geography, poetry, history, astronomy. He made a map of the known world. Marking rivers and mountains, cities and peoples. He calculated the circumference of the earth, using only shadows and geometry. He noticed that at noon on the summer solstice, in the city of Cyane, far to the south, the sun cast no shadows. It was directly overhead, but in Alexandria, at the same moment. Shadows fell. The sun was at an angle, about 7 degrees. Eratosthenes knew the distance between the cities, about 5,000 stadia. From this, he calculated. If 7 degrees equals 5,000 stadia, then 360 degrees. A full circle. The circumference of the earth. Would be about 250,000 stadia. His calculation was remarkably accurate. Within a few % of the true value. 2,000 years before satellites. Before modern instruments, just shadows and logic, and access to the knowledge in the library. There were rules about the library, some formal, some informal. Silence was expected, not enforced strictly, but maintained by mutual respect. Everyone knew they were in a sacred space. Scrolls were not to leave the library. Too precious. Too easily lost or damaged. You read them there, in the reading rooms, under the watchful eyes of the librarians. If you wanted a copy, you could commission one. The library had scribes, professional copyists, who would duplicate texts for a fee, but it took time. Days or weeks, depending on the length of the work and the accuracy required. There was a famous story about the library's hunger for texts. Every ship that came to Alexandria's harbor had to be searched. Not for contraband, but for books. Any scrolls found were confiscated. Temporarily taken to the library to be copied. The library's scribes would work quickly, making duplicates. Then the scrolls would be returned to their owners. Usually, sometimes though, if the text was particularly rare, particularly valuable, the library would keep the original. And return the copy instead. Knowledge was too important to let it sail away. It was theft, technically, but in service of a higher purpose. Or so they told themselves. The library also sought out texts actively. Sending agents to other cities, to Athens, to Rhodes, to Pergamum. These agents would search in private libraries, in temple archives, looking for works the library didn't have. They would offer to buy them or to borrow them for copying. They had generous budgets. Backed by the Ptolemaic treasury, sometimes they would hear of a rare text, a unique copy, in some distant city, and they would travel for months. to acquire it, to bring it back to Alexandria, to add it to the great collection in the evenings, after the reading rooms closed. The scholars would gather in the gardens of the Mausion, or in dining halls, or in private rooms. They would eat together, drink wine, talk. Imagine those conversations. Astronomers discussing the movements of planets. Trying to explain retrograde motion. Debating whether the Earth or the Sun was the center. Poets reciting new verses. Testing them on their colleagues. Arguing about meter and meaning. Physicians comparing treatments. What works for fevers? What helps with wounds? Sharing knowledge that could save lives. Philosophers debating. Always debating. The nature of reality. The meaning of virtue. The best way to live. These conversations were as valuable as the texts themselves. Knowledge wasn't just stored. It was discussed, challenged, refined, advanced. The library survived for centuries through the reigns of many Ptolemies. As the dynasty slowly declined, as Rome grew more powerful, as Egypt's independence slowly eroded, but the library endured. A constant, a source of pride for the city, for the world. Until it didn't. We don't know exactly when the Library of Alexandria was destroyed. The ancient sources are contradictory. Unclear. Some blame Julius Caesar. In 48 BCE, during his war with Pompey, Caesar was in Alexandria, caught up in Egyptian political intrigue, supporting Cleopatra's claim to the throne. His enemies controlled the harbor. Egyptian forces, hostile to him. Caesar ordered the ships burned to prevent them being used against him. The fire spread from the ships to the docks, from the docks to warehouses. Some say it reached the library, that some scrolls were destroyed, perhaps many, perhaps most, but other sources say the library survived. That the fire didn't reach it. or that what burned was only a warehouse. Scrolls waiting to be processed. Not the main collection. We don't know for certain. The truth is lost. Like so much else, perhaps the library declined gradually. Over centuries. As the Fifth Ptolemaic dynasty weakened, as funds dried up, as patronage decreased, as Rome took control of Egypt, after Cleopatra's death in 30 BCE, the Romans were less interested in Greek learning, less invested in the library. They had their own priorities. Maintenance was neglected. Acquisition stopped. Scholars were no longer supported. The library may have simply withered. Slowly. Over generations, or perhaps religious conflict destroyed it, as Christianity rose. In the 4th century, becoming the official religion of Rome, the old pagan temples were closed or destroyed. Or converted to churches. The Mausoleum was a temple to the Muses, pagan goddesses. No longer acceptable. Some sources blame Theophilus. Bishop of Alexandria. In 391 CE, he led the destruction of pagan temples, including the Serapeum, a daughter library of the Great Library of Alexandria. Perhaps the main library fell then too. We don't know. Or perhaps it survived even longer. Until the Arab conquest. In 641 CE, there's a story, probably apocryphal, of the caliph saying, if the books agree with the Quran, they are unnecessary. If they disagree, they are heretical. Either way, burn them, but this story appears late. In sources written centuries after the fact, by Christian chroniclers. With their own biases, it's probably not true. But it became part of the legend. Part of how the story is told, however it happened. Whenever it happened. The Library of Alexandria was lost. Not a single scroll survives. Not one. Of the hundreds of thousands that once filled those holes, we know they existed, because later authors mentioned them. Quote from them. Describe them. plays by Aeschylus and Sophocles, lost plays. We know the titles, but not the words. Scientific treatises on medicine, on astronomy, on mathematics. Lost history books. Describing empires we barely know. Events we can only guess at. Lost. Poetry. In Greek. In Egyptian. In languages that are themselves now dead. Lost. Sometimes, very rarely. A text survives, copied before the library's destruction, preserved somewhere else, in some other library, and scholars recognize it from ancient descriptions. Ah, this is the work that was in Alexandria, that everyone thought was lost. But here it is. These moments are rare, joyful, but tinged with sadness, because for every text that survived, hundreds didn't. Thousands didn't. All that knowledge. All that beauty. All that human thought and creativity. Gone. Into silence. Into the dark. There was another great library in the ancient world. In the city of Pergamum. In what is now Western Turkey. On the Aegean coast. Pergamum was built on a hill. A high rocky prominence. Rising above the surrounding plain, from the Acropolis, the highest point. You could see for miles, rolling hills, river valleys, and in the distance, the sea. It was a dramatic setting. Defensive. Beautiful. Perfect for a capital city. The library was founded around 200 BCE by the Attalid dynasty. The kings of Pergamum. They wanted to rival Alexandria, to create their own center of learning, their own great collection. They had the wealth to do it. Pergamum was rich from trade, from agriculture, from the silver mines in their territory. And they had the ambition to be remembered, not just as conquerors, but as patrons of culture. Of knowledge. The library was part of a temple complex dedicated to Athena, goddess of wisdom. How fitting. A library and a temple to wisdom. The building was magnificent. Marble colonnades. A portico with columns on 3 sides. Open to the air in the center of the main hall. A statue of Athena. Tall. Serene. Copied from the famous statue by Phidias in Athens, the goddess looked out over the reading rooms, as if watching over the scholars, blessing their work. The scrolls were arranged in separate rooms, organized by subject, one room for poetry and drama, epic poems, tragedies, comedies, another for philosophy, the works of Plato and Aristotle, the Stoics and Epicureans, treatises on ethics and logic, another for history and rhetoric, accounts of wars and kings, speeches and letters, another for medicine and natural history, texts on anatomy and disease, on plants and animals, on the natural world, another for mathematics and astronomy, geometric proofs, calculations of planetary motions, star catalogues. Each room had shelves from floor to ceiling. Made of cedar, resistant to decay, fragrant. The scrolls were arranged carefully by author, by date, making it easy for scholars to find what they needed. The library held, they say, 200,000 scrolls. Perhaps more. Second only to Alexandria. A rivalry between cities. Between kings. Played out in books. The kings of Pergamum sent agents far and wide to acquire texts, buying libraries from scholars who had died. Commissioning copies of rare works, they competed with Alexandria's agents. sometimes bidding against each other for the same text. Driving up prices. It was a Cold War. Fought with gold. For knowledge, this competition led to an innovation. A change that would affect books forever. Egypt controlled the papyrus trade. Papyrus grew along the Nile. It was processed in Egyptian workshops, then exported. Alexandria had easy access to all the papyrus they needed. But Pergamum had to import it. At great cost. Some sources say Egypt cut off the supply. Deliberately. To limit Pergamum's library. To maintain Alexandria's supremacy, true or not. Pergamum needed an alternative, and so they developed parchment. Parchment is made from animal skins, usually sheep or goats. Sometimes calves. The skins are cleaned, stretched on frames, scraped with curved blades until thin, then treated with lime to remove hair and flesh. Then scraped again and again until smooth. Finally, they are dried and cut into sheets. The result is a writing surface, pale, smooth, durable, more durable than papyrus, less likely to crack or crumble, and it had another advantage. You could write on both sides. Papyrus worked best, written on one side only. But parchment was smooth on both faces. This meant you could fit twice as much text in the same physical space. More than that, parchment could be folded, cut, sewn together. This led to a new format. The Codex. A book with pages. Instead of a scroll, easier to use. Easier to reference. You could flip to any point without unrolling the entire text. The Codex would eventually replace the scroll. Throughout the Mediterranean world, and then throughout Europe, and eventually the world, all books, for the next 2,000 years, would use this format. Pages between covers, an innovation born in Pergamum from necessity. From competition with Alexandria, the word parchment itself comes from Pergamum. Pergamenum in Latin, parchment in English, a permanent linguistic reminder of where it was developed. Scholars came to study at Pergamum from across the Greek world. Philosophers, physicians, historians. One of the most famous was Galen, born in Pergamum in 129 CE. The son of an architect, he studied philosophy first. Then turned to medicine. He would spend hours in the library's medical section, reading the works of Hippocrates, the ancient physician, the father of medicine, reading treatises on anatomy. On the theory of humors, blood and flame, yellow bile and black bile, the four fluids that were thought to govern health. Reading about treatments, herbal remedies, surgical techniques. The proper care of wounds. Galen would become the most influential physician in history. After Hippocrates, his works would dominate medicine for 1500 years. Until the Renaissance, all built on a foundation laid in the Library of Pergamum. Among those carefully organized scrolls, but Pergamum's library met an unusual fate. Unlike Alexandria, unlike so many others, it didn't burn. Instead, it was given away. In the 1st century BCE, Mark Antony controlled the Eastern Roman territories. He was in love with Cleopatra, the last Ptolemaic ruler of Egypt. He wanted to impress her. To give her a gift worthy of her status. So he gave her Pergamum's library. The entire collection. 200,000 scrolls. They were packed carefully. Loaded onto ships. And transported to Alexandria, a gift of knowledge. A romantic gesture. On an imperial scale, the scrolls were integrated into Alexandria's collection to replace what had been lost in Caesar's fire, or to supplement what remained, depending on which version of the story you believe. And so the Library of Pergamum became part of the Library of Alexandria, its identity absorbed. Its collection merged. Both libraries would eventually be lost. Both collections destroyed. But for a few decades, they were together. The two great rivals united all that knowledge, all those scrolls, in one place. The dream of the Ptolemies finally realized. Just before the end, in 330 CE, the Emperor Constantine founded a new capital, on the site of the ancient Greek city of Byzantium. He chose the location carefully. On the Bosphorus Strait, where Europe meets Asia. Where the Mediterranean world meets the Black Sea, a crossroads. Easy to defend. With harbors on two sides, he named the city after himself. Constantinople, the city of Constantine, the new Rome. When the Western Roman Empire fell in the 5th century, when barbarians overran Italy and Gaul and Spain, when Rome itself was sacked, multiple times, the Eastern Empire endured, centered on Constantinople, what we now call the Byzantine Empire, though they called themselves Romans. Always Romans, they preserved. While the West descended into chaos, while cities shrank, while literacy declined, while libraries burned, Constantinople preserved. The Imperial Library was founded by Constantine himself and expanded by his successors. Constantius II, Theodosius III, Justinian Rye. It was housed in the palace complex, the Great Palace, which covered acres in the heart of the city. The library had multiple buildings, multiple halls, each dedicated to different subjects, one for Christian scriptures and theology, the Bible in Greek, commentaries by the Church Fathers, treatises on doctrine, another for law, Roman law codes, legal precedents, the accumulated judicial wisdom of centuries, another for philosophy, the works of the ancient Greeks, Plato, Aristotle, the Stoics, the Neoplatonists. Another for history and literature, Homer's epics, the Greek tragedians, historical chronicles. Another for medicine and natural sciences. Galen's medical texts, botanical treatises, works on astronomy. Each room was beautiful. High vaulted ceilings, tall windows, light streaming in. The books themselves had changed. No longer scrolls, but codices. Pages sewn between boards. The pages were parchment, sometimes vellum. The finest calfskin, smooth, white, perfect for writing. The text was in Greek. Written in uncial script. Rounded letters. Carefully formed. Some manuscripts were decorated with gold leaf, with illuminations, miniature paintings in the margins. The most precious books were kept in special cases, covered in silk, adorned with precious metals. With gems, these were not just books. They were treasures, works of art. As beautiful as they were, informative, the library employed many scribes. This was their life's work. Copying texts, preserving them. They worked in a scriptorium, a large room with many desks. Natural light from big windows. Each scribe had a desk, angled for writing, with places for ink and pens. The pens were cut from reeds. Sharpened to a point, dipped in iron gall ink. Black, permanent. The work was slow, meticulous. Each letter formed carefully. Consistency was important, so the text was easy to read, no mistakes allowed. If you made an error, you scraped it off. With a knife, and rewrote it. A single book could take weeks to copy. Months for a long work, but it was necessary. Books didn't last forever. Parchment degraded. Ink faded. Pages tore. To preserve a text, you had to keep copying it. Generation after generation. And so the scribes worked. Day after day. Year after year, in silence usually. Just the scratch of pens, the rustle of pages, the occasional cough or sigh. They were the guardians of civilization. And they knew it for centuries. Constantinople was the repository of ancient learning when libraries burned in the West, when monasteries were destroyed by raiders. The texts often still existed in Constantinople, safe behind the city's massive walls. The walls of Constantinople were legendary, triple layered in some places. With moats, with towers, they protected the city for over 1,000 years. Through countless sieges, by Persians, by Arabs, by Vikings, by Crusaders. The walls held, and behind them, the library endured, but no walls last forever. In 1204, the Fourth Crusade arrived. They were supposed to be going to Egypt to fight the Muslims. To reclaim Jerusalem, but politics intervened. Money problems. A deposed Byzantine prince promising rewards. The Crusaders turned aside to Constantinople. Fellow Christians, Orthodox rather than Catholic, but Christians nonetheless. They laid siege to the city. The walls held at first, but there were too few defenders. The Crusaders broke through, breached the sea walls, poured into the city, and they sacked it for 3 days. Constantinople burned, the city that had stood for 900 years, that had never fallen, that had preserved so much, was looted by the very Crusaders who had sworn to defend Christianity. They tore through the palace, stealing gold and silver. Icons and relics, they desecrated churches, broke altars, melted down sacred vessels for their gold. And the library. Some books were burned, used for kindling in the cold spring nights. Others were destroyed for their covers, the silk torn off, the gems pried loose, the pages scattered. Some were torn apart out of ignorance. The Crusaders were mostly French and Italian. They read Latin, not Greek. To them, the Greek books were unintelligible. Worthless. Just more loot to discard. A few manuscripts were saved, taken as souvenirs, hidden by citizens. Or smuggled out by fleeing scholars, but most were lost. In 3 days. Centuries of preservation. Undone when the Byzantines eventually retook their city. In 1261, they tried to rebuild. The library was restored. In part. With what books could be found or copied, but it was never the same. Never as grand. Never as complete. The empire was dying. Slowly. Shrinking year by year. As the Ottoman Turks expanded. When Constantinople finally fell. For the last time. In 1453, to Myrmidiscus, the library that remained was dispersed. Some books were saved by fleeing scholars, carried west to Italy to help spark the Renaissance. Others were lost in the chaos of conquest, the great Imperial Library. That had preserved ancient learning through the dark centuries was gone. In the 8th century, in Baghdad, a new empire rose, the Abbasid Caliphate. Stretching from the Atlantic to Central Asia, the largest empire the world had yet seen. Its capital was Baghdad. Founded in 762 CE by the Caliph al-Mansur. On the banks of the Tigris River, Baghdad was planned as a perfect city. Circular, with walls within walls. The palace at the very center. And it grew. Rapidly. Becoming one of the largest cities in the world. A center of trade, of culture, of learning. The Abbasid caliphs valued knowledge. they established a library, Bayt al-Hikmah, the House of Wisdom. It began modestly as a palace library. Under Harun al-Rashid, the Caliph of the Arabian Nights' tales, but it grew under his son Al-Ma'mun. Who ruled from 8113 to 833, Al-Ma'mun had a dream. According to the stories, in his dream, Aristotle appeared to him. The ancient Greek philosopher, dead for 1,000 years, they spoke of reason, of truth, of the compatibility of philosophy and faith. When Al-Ma'mun woke, he vowed to collect all philosophical knowledge, to translate it, to preserve it, to build on it. And so the House of Wisdom expanded, becoming a major institution. A center of translation and research, the House of Wisdom was devoted to translation, taking works from other languages and rendering them in Arabic, Greek philosophy and science, Persian literature and history, Indian mathematics and astronomy,